When we hear the words consciousness and artificial intelligence in the same sentence, it feels like an oxymoron. Artificial intelligence makes you think of cold, hard machines with a silicone skin perhaps that makes them look like us, but surely could never truly think and feel as deeply as human beings. Consciousness is the very essence of what makes humans unique. It is our subjective experience. It is the fabric of everything we have ever felt. But when you think about it, our experience as humans comes down to the neurons firing from sensory organs to our nervous system and then to our brain. This is called computationalism. The idea that intelligent behavior is causally explained by computations performed by the agent's cognitive system. In roughly equivalent terms, computationalism says that cognition is computation. There are so many sci-fi movies and shows which depict conscious, intelligent robots who we actually end up sympathizing with in some cases. The reason why we end up feeling this affection for what we know is a heartless machine is that they are able to convince us that they are worthy of our empathy, because they can hurt, feel, love, and experience like us. If you've seen these movies or others like them, you will know that creating conscious machines is risky because of the instinctive lack of trust we have in machines replacing humans. This fear is grounded, though, because we can no longer deny the fact that soon many jobs and tasks are and will continue to become automated, putting our lives in the hands of complex systems. My question remains: if the brain is, at its essence, a computer receiving input, completing complex algorithms, and putting out a feeling, thought, or sensation, is it possible, given the right technology, to recreate this artificially? We need to know what consciousness entails. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines it as the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. But what exactly does it mean to be awake and aware? The conscious experience is a dazzling, intricate combination of sensory input and interpretation that happens from our fingertips to our cerebral cortex and that makes us think, feel, love, know ourselves, and experience life uniquely. But it isn't magic. Instead, it is the product of cells, neurotransmitters, and brain structures. It is the complex ways that they work together that remains mysterious. Most important in this is the role of the neuron. According to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, sensory input such as visual stimuli causes a spike in electrical potential which is then transmitted along neural circuits, causing reception of the sensory input. The different ways that these neurons interact in our brains are complex and varied, but what we know is that it works like an information processing machine which interprets the relevant sensory inputs, motor outputs, and internal variables related to memory, motivation, and expectation. Neurologist Christoph Koch also explains that in order to recreate consciousness, we would need to fully recreate a map of the brain and all of its neurons. Moreover, the model would need to be able to process sensory information in order to feel the world around it and its own bodies. Confirming that the machine is actually self-aware is the hard part. One of the ways is through the Turing test, proposed by the creator of the first computer in World War II, Alan Turing. The test suggests that a human evaluator would converse freely with an AI. If the evaluator couldn't potently tell that they were talking to a program, the test is passed. Passing meant that the machine could exhibit intelligent behavior enough to make it indistinguishable from a human's. The issue with this test lies in the ability to confirm the consciousness. The machine could answer to the human, "Yes, I am self-aware and subjectively experiencing the world," and show all signs of consciousness through what it says, but we may not know if this is authentic or just encoded. The Chinese room, proposed by philosopher John Searle, demonstrates this. The Chinese room thought experiment is as follows. Suppose you are in a closed room. You receive Mandarin characters through a slot and are asked to produce a meaningful response in Mandarin back out. In the room, there is an advanced program, written in English, which tells you exactly how to respond to any input. E.g., if asked X, give out character Y. You would then be able to produce the perfect response, and the outsiders would be convinced that you understand the language completely, even though you don't know a single word of the conversation, but simply how to put these meaningless words together. Searle's argument, then, is that a computer that reports itself to be conscious would only be responding well enough through its program to convince you that it was, and whether or not it is actually experiencing these things would be impossible to tell. This refutes the validity of the Turing test and presents the idea that there is no way to confirm the sentience of AI, and therefore we can never say that it truly exists. But wait, if you think about it, you can't be sure that any other creature but yourself is conscious based on this. How do we know that any other person is sentient? Because they tell us, because they act conscious, and because we trust that if we as humans are sentient, then all other humans must be too. But do we know this for sure? According to the Chinese room, every other person could be an extremely intelligent AI that simply knows how to imitate consciousness well enough. You might be the only real human, surrounded by 7 billion advanced man-made androids, and there's no way of you truly knowing without just relying on communication. So we might just have to do that with the AI that we create in the future. Words like spirit, mind, and soul are often used to describe the source of human consciousness, which is fueled by the idea of dualism, that the mind exists separately from our physical body. However, there is nothing to prove the existence of these entities in our physical world without some sort of religious argument, which becomes invalid in the world of empirical observational study. Then, it seems that computationalism is the best way to explain how the brain processes information. Consciousness isn't some sort of metaphysical matter that behaves differently than the rest of our biological processes. Like the feeling of sight or sound or taste, it is a highly complex computation that therefore could theoretically be recreated given the right technology. Here's where it gets scary. We're thinking about whether or not we could create conscious AI, but what about whether or not we should? If a machine can feel, would it be wrong to keep it in a lab if it has curiosity, interests, and mental health? What if it were to rebel and begin to act in a way that was harmful to humans? Would it be ethical to shut it down even though we are now dealing with something sentient? If we create something that is essentially as human as we are, with the same level of feeling, do we now have to treat it with the same standards of human rights? Because at that point, what separates them from us other than their composition? All of these questions and more will have to be considered. After the scientists have created these machines, we will have to place faith in lawmakers and politicians to decide how to properly implement them into society. These existential fears are exemplified in the scene from 2001: A Space Odyssey, in which the robot HAL 9000 has been programmed to securely deliver the Voyager spaceship to its destination, but decides that in order to complete the mission, it must kill off the humans on board who are interfering with it. At the end of the movie, the ship's captain, Dave, has to disconnect HAL. However, in its final moments, it delivers a speech pleading for its life, saying,
I can feel it. I'm afraid.
This movie unsettles me about the future of AI for two reasons. First, HAL had to decide between whether or not to carry out the task it has been programmed to do and kill the humans, or instead to follow the moral lessons it has learned. It chooses the former, of course, which makes us ask, how do we stop AI doing what they, with their superior objective thinking, deem the right choice based on their coding? Secondly, HAL saying that it is scared and can feel it when it is being shut down confirms the ethical concerns that these robots would have a similar existential fear as human beings, and that killing them would be a more depraved act than simply shutting down a machine. While 2001 is a fictional story from the 1960s, it has aged as a perfect example of the realistic and terrifying questions we will have to consider as AI progresses. To conclude, today, even the greatest neuroscientists still don't know exactly what gives every human the subjective experience of life. Beyond that, the coding and engineering of AI has only come into full force in the past 30 or so years, meaning there is much room for growth in this field as well. So, when we discuss the possibility of recreating consciousness in AI, we can only really talk in hypothetical terms, as applying these ideas most likely won't be possible for decades. Still, the computationalist theory that the brain works as an information processing machine remains my thesis and seems the only rational explanation for how consciousness could work. Given this, it seems likely that once the technology and understanding of our neurological map is available, we can indeed simulate consciousness in AI, or at least create an AI that passes the Turing test.